I was having Yasha but Rico from Street Scores, and we have a lot of random information, some crazy stats, some crazy quotes from everything that's gone down for the past couple of days and dating all the way back to that Rams loss that we just took. First of all, it's apparent that Rivera wanted to bench Sam Howell. Like, that was his call. Eric Bieniemy agreed. We're going to dive into a lot of Rivera problems. We're going to dive into a lot of Eric Bieniemy problems, but also an interesting advanced stat that says that maybe Eric Bieniemy is not the problem. So we got to take a look at a lot of advanced stats when it comes to Sam Howell as well. Is it Sam Howell's fault more than anybody else's? Also, is Emmanuel Forbes already a wasted draft pick? Rivera seems to think so. How little playing time he got against the Rams makes absolutely no sense. We got to talk about that. Also, the Commanders are not the most watched team in DC. We have some interesting stats that if that boy Josh Harris sees it, he's probably gonna blow a gasket. And that's just something they've really got to fix right there. It's crazy. Also, we're gonna do a New York Jets preview for sure, especially like you see in the background. I'm not going to do like a full deep dive because neither of us are playing for anything important. So I'm not even about to sit here and act like, oh man, Terry McLaurin versus Sauce Gardner in our linebackers versus the Jets running backs. And we're not even about to sit here and pretend. We got to dive into a lot of stats. And also, I've brought it up in other videos, but what could be the consequences to this game? If Commanders lose, how high of a draft pick could they end up with? Potentially, if they end up winning this game against the Jets, how far below can we fall? And also, what are the odds right now? Who are the favorites going into this game? I have some very interesting stats between the both teams because one team is the worst at one thing, the other team is the worst at the other. We'll see how this goes. And of course, I'm also going to give y'all an injury report, and we're going to talk about who may or may not even play in this upcoming game. But just to warn you, this is the battle of the butt. This is the trash off. This is the butt bowl. So I would say buckle up, but honestly, you might just want to sit back and relax watching this upcoming game. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I already came out with a video earlier today with the rumor report from Jacina Anderson, however you want to look at it, about Ben Johnson requiring at the very least $15 million per year to take a head coaching job and to leave the Lions. And of course, we dive into all of that. But the main reason I did the video was to break down why the Commanders should be trying to get Ben Johnson as our next head coach. And I break down the offense and stats where they rank offensively and a lot of important stats, all of that. That's the main point of that video. Make sure you go check that out if you haven't yet. And also stay tuned for all of the more videos. I'm going to do a breakdown of all of the Commanders that may actually make the Pro Bowl and whether or not we even deserve it. And also, I have some information that is breaking down where the Commanders rank in the top head coaching opening. So we just did a breakdown of Ben Johnson earlier today. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after that, maybe Saturday, we're going to look at where the Commanders rank in the top 10 head coaching vacancy spots right now. Do head coaches even want to come to us? Would they prefer to go to other teams? All of that type of stuff. ESPN did a whole breakdown, an article about the pros and cons, and then I also listed some pros that favor us that ESPN didn't even talk about or even think about. So stay tuned for all of that content. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. Let's get it.
He's our quarterback for the 5-10 years, and I truly believe that.
All right, so first of all, the Pro Football Focus grades are very telling because Samuel Cosmi was our highest graded, not only just offensive player in general, but offensive lineman especially. Like, he dominated. Like, it was Samuel Cosmi 93.1, and then you have Jacoby Brissett with a 92. Very interesting. And then Terry McLaurin was third with an 88, Andrew Wiley with a 72.4, and a Charles Leno with a 69.8. Those are your 5 highest graded offensive players. Of course, if Brian Robinson were healthy, he'd probably be in the top 5 because he usually is. But when it comes to Samuel Cosmi, it's really interesting because he was like the best by far out of the offensive linemen. Again, he had a 92. Andrew Wiley was second with a 72. So it sounds like that right side of the offensive line was locked down, not allowing anything to come to Samuel Cosmi based on Pro Football Focus grades. Of course, we got to watch the all 22, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, man. Rewatching that Sorry, Rams game, all 22. I need to, just like my boy Louis 2 said, like we need to, but boy, it just doesn't even sound fun. But we got to get to the bottom of some things. I gotta find some time to check out the all 22. But according to Pro Football Focus, Samuel Cosmi had a 92 run grade and an 89.5 passing grade. Come on, dog. Again, a grade of a 93 overall, man. Shouts out to him. Andrew Wiley had a 72 run blocking grade, a 69.6 passing grade, and everybody else it's not looking too good. Even though Charles Leno had an 81 pass protection grade, but a 56 run protection grade, and then Nick Gates had a 79.4 pass protection grade, but a 60 run defense grade. Samuel Cosmi was our only great offensive lineman, and Andrew Wiley was, according to Pro Football Focus, our only solid one, and everybody else was either terrible on both sides, run blocking and pass protection, or terrible on one or the other. Those are our only two solid at the very least, guys. Samuel Cosmi, let's also add to the fact that Samuel Cosmi over the past 5 weeks is the highest graded offensive lineman in the NFL. That's incredible, man. Samuel Cosmi has a 91.6 Pro Football Focus grade over the past 5 weeks, and that is the second highest graded guard in the NFL over that span of the past 5 weeks. So you can argue Samuel Cosmi has been one of the best guards in the NFL. At the very least, these past 5 weeks, he's been looking like an all-pro out there, not going for nothing. So that takes me to the point that, and just to do a quick preview, I'm working on a video where I'm breaking down all of the pieces on this team, all of the players and things that we can build around. Some of the guys that should stay, some of the guys that we can, are future building blocks for a potential playoff contender, Super Bowl contender. Samuel Cosmi is obviously one of those. We're good at right guard. We just got to figure out a lot of other positions. But you may be surprised. There are some other players that, like, even if they aren't a certified dominant player at their position, like a Samuel Cosmi, we have guys with some potential, some hope, some flashes and things like that. So I'm working on a video like that. Who are some of the very few players that are currently on this team that we should build this organization around? And not only that, but some of the players that should potentially attract a really good GM and a really good head coach, because they'll look and be like, oh man, Samuel Cosmi, this guy, that guy, oh yeah, I can work with that. We got these pieces. Let me get a free agency, a couple of drafts, and we can get something going here. We can work magic with that. I can work with this. This is a good start type of thing. So that's the main point of that video. Be on the lookout for that, man. But man, sadly, Chris Paul, just to point him out, and I hate to do this, but he had a 54.9 run grade, a 15.3 pass grade. With a grade that bad, again, I'm about to look at the all 22 again, but it sounds like this man was out there allowing people to beat him every snap with a 15. Imagine coming back home from school and you had a 15.9 overall grade for any class, dog. Come on, bro. But I think it is worth noting that Samuel Cosmi has arguably had the best season out of anybody on the team, regardless on offense, defense, special teams. Samuel Cosmi is arguably our best player right now. Honestly, like, it's really that serious. Now let's talk about Sam Howell, because I'm pretty sure that's the majority of the reason that a lot of people pulled up here. Is Sam Howell the biggest reason to blame for a lot of the bad that's been going on this season? Because there's no way we can blame any singular person. Like, even as much as we're tired of Ron Rivera and we're ready for him to go, we're ready for Martin Mayhew to go, this entire front office, coaching staff, everybody to just disappear, Eric Bieniemy, we can't place all of the blame on one person. The only debate that we're having truly is who deserves the majority of it. If we had a blame pie, who takes the largest percentage, who takes up the most space? Now we got to take a look at the fact that, according to some statistics, is it potentially Samuel Howell? I don't know, man. I mean, we're going to take a look at some things. We're going to break some things down. You come away with your own conclusion. It's really hard for me personally to say it's Samuel Howell's fault. I really feel like we can build around Sam Howell to be our future quarterback. But again, like I keep saying, the next regime has every right to come and decide what they want to do with the quarterback position. If they stick with Sam Howell, I'll be a little surprised, but I'll also be pretty happy because we can spend those draft picks on tackle, Brock Bowers, an elite weapon, and just build around him. If he doesn't work out, then you have all of that greatness built around the quarterback, and then you draft your guy in the 2025 draft potentially, or however else we figure it out. But again, I would not be surprised at all, especially based on the way that Sam Howell has played since that Seahawks game. that the next regime will move on from him. I honestly would be pretty surprised if they don't at this point. But I am a guy that, again, I like Sam Howell. Let's dive into it, though. Shouts out to WrestleMania over there at Locked On Commanders. He brought up the fact that the Rams had Pro Football Focus 16 total pressures versus the Commanders a few days ago. 1 sack, 3 QB hits, 12 hurries. The previous week against the Ravens, they had 29 pressures with 2 sacks, 4 QB hits, and 23 hurries. So Lamar Jackson was under far more duress than Sam Howell ever was in that Rams game when they played the exact same team back to back. When the Rams played the Ravens, when the Rams played the Commanders, Sam Howell had way better protection than Lamar Jackson even had. Now, of course, you could talk about the fact that Lamar Jackson probably runs into his own pressures a lot of the time. He may be the reason that some of those pressures happen. Either way, that presents the fact that maybe there's no excuse for Sam Howell. And that's why arguably that game against the Rams was his worst game all season, because at least the Buffalo Bills game and a lot of the other really bad games he's had against the Cowboys and stuff like that, you could blame the offensive line. You could blame a lot of things, but most notably the offensive line. Like, it was obvious this man has no time in the pocket. The thing that was so discouraging about the Rams game, especially with me liking Sam Howell, but I'm also very infatuated with the potential of like a Jada Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams, but I like Sam Howell. But the reason that Rams game was just so deflating, it like really hurt my spirit, was the fact that Sam Howell actually had a lot of time in the pocket. I mean, if you notice when Jacoby Brissett comes in the game, he has plenty of time as well. It just didn't really feel like it was Sam Howell because Sam Howell was rushing things. He wasn't seeing players there, but he had way better protection than he normally had all season. And it just seems like at this point he's shell-shocked and has PTSD. And it's like this offensive line basically kind of ruined him a little bit. I think he can bounce back. I think he has the potential to bounce back. But I think that Rams game was the result and the consequence of a quarterback getting beat up so much throughout the season that when the offensive line does finally block well, he's not ready for it. This man is out here speeding through his progressions and he has like another 2-3 seconds worth of blocking to go and he's trying to get the ball out of his hands. And again, that's why that felt like that was the worst Sam Howell game he's had really ever, especially since he's hit the NFL, because he actually had good blocking, but he went out there and played like he didn't. And so there was no like excuses of, well, he wasn't able to get this ball to this receiver because the offensive line didn't give him time or anything like that. No, it was just Sam Howell by himself being bad. Now, of course, according to Pro Football Focus grades, you had a lot of guys that couldn't pass protect, but still, in comparison to other games, Sam Howell had the best protection probably arguably all season. And then it was really easy to notice when Jacoby Brissett came into the game because he had the exact same pass protection as Sam Howell, but he was executing. He was getting the ball to the right players. He was giving Terry McLaurin a chance deep down the field. He was taking advantage of the fact that Rams weren't using a lot of safeties to stay back there to stop us from passing the ball. They were more so playing up and stopping everything underneath. Jacoby Brissett came in, saw that on the tablet from the sideline, came in and immediately took advantage of that. Sam Howell, for some reason, never attempted. Shouts out to Grant Paulson for presenting these stats. Now, Sam Howell is first in dropbacks and pass attempts, and he has been for a while now. That's why he led the NFL in passing yards. That's why right now he's second in completions and 7th in yards. But you can argue those are empty calories because he has a 22nd ranked Pro Football Focus passing grade. He's tied for 20th in yards per attempt, so he's not very efficient. He just throws the ball a lot. He's last in interceptions and batted down passes, which is a bad thing. That means he has the most. He's tied for 12th in big time throw percentage, so that's decent. That's around a little bit above average, okay. But he's 21st in turnover worthy percentage. So as far as, you know, throwing the ball in harm's way, putting it in bad spots where it could potentially lead to a turnover, and whether, I mean, because the reason we do turnover worthy percentage rather than just looking at interceptions, just a surface stat, is because some DBs have it right in their hands, right in their chest, and drop it. And we need to take that into account. Sometimes there is just luck involved. And so when you're looking at turnover worthy percentage throws, Sam Howell is 21st in the NFL at protecting the ball and putting it in good situations. That's not very good. Again, This is the total for the entire season up to this point, so we can blame offensive line. We can blame Eric Bieniemy for a lot of it. We can blame receivers not getting open. We can blame receivers dropping open passes. There's a lot of things to blame overall for the bad season Sam Howell's had, but when you're trying to isolate Sam Howell away from everything else, it's not looking too good that way either. Shouts out to Grant Paulson also for this as well. As the Commanders have encountered their toughest stretch of defenses they faced this season, Sam Howell has struggled mightily, immensely over the past month. He has a completion percentage of 59%, 5.7 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. So I think that also is something important to throw out there, that Sam Howell is also struggling a little bit more lately because we are going against tougher defense. Would I say we've been going against the best defenses in the NFL? I wouldn't necessarily say that, but there is a reason why since the Seahawks game up till now, he's looked a little bit worse than when he looked before, because before we weren't playing defenses as good. Now we're playing better defenses, and the Jets this upcoming game, boy, them Jets may arguably be the best defense we've gone against this season. You could throw the Cowboys out there as well. That game was terrible, but I think there is a strong correlation between Sam Howell not playing as well lately and us also going against better defenses lately. But shouts out my boy at MofoPod, my boy Colin Dunphy, always bringing up a lot of great advanced stats charting, rankings, and things like that. He brings up a great point. What's eating Sam Howell now? The good news, he's taking fewer sacks per pressure. He's improved there as far as pocket manipulation, pocket presence, movement, and stuff like that, getting out the way. The bad news, it may not matter. The connection, limiting the severity of sacks might help. The takeaway, though, if he gets rid of the ball quicker, he might be more successful. But at the same time, it's hard to say that because against the Rams, if anything, he was getting rid of the ball too quickly and not allowing people to get open or plays to fully develop or not seeing the open guy in the flat and things like that, and when he actually had time. Moving on, the Rams game broke the second and third graphs. It was the first time he had a bad game while only taking 1 sack, and it wasn't a very harmful sack either, only 1 EPA. And that's okay. Lots of things to go on in EPA, and that's why it's descriptive and important. So he's basically bringing up the fact that, yeah, this was a very odd game from Sam Howell because this was the first time that sacks weren't the reason that he was bad. And then you have that one play where Jonathan Williams is wide open in the flat and Sam Howell did not see him, and you just can't leave plays on the field like this, man. Again, we could blame Eric Bieniemy for a lot of things, offensive line, receivers, or whatever, but Sam Howell, if you really watch the tape, even just throughout the entire season, every quarterback does this. It's not like Pat Mahomes sees every open receiver every time. Every quarterback does this, even the elite ones, but the problem is that Sam Howell does it too often. If you want to see the play, here it is just real quick. And it's crazy because he completed the pass. Like, we converted the 3rd or 4th down, whatever this is. It may have been 4th down. Like, the play worked, but it's like, man, you could have had a touchdown at the top of the screen to Jonathan Williams, man. Instead of just a first down, it could have been a touchdown. That's what we talk about. That's what we mean when we say leaving plays on the field, leaving yards on the field, leaving points on the field. Exactly right there. Also, shouts out to Nikki Javala for bringing up a chart, as you can currently see on the screen right now. And it's showing Sam Howell stats, a lot of them advanced stats, some surface stats and things like that, some really interesting, important stats. And it's showing how he looked weeks 1 through 8, going 3 and 5, and how he's looked weeks 9 through 15, going 1 and 5, with that only win being against the terrible Patriots, who as of right now have the 3rd overall pick, 1 pick ahead of us in the draft. Terrible team to beat. I mean, if anything, at this point, it would be nice to be ahead of them in draft order, but it is what it is. But either way, Ben Standig brings up a great point while still looking at this chart. What will be interesting for whomever makes the 2024 decisions is how much they see the regression in these numbers or a decline with the rise in competition. Howell showed legit skill and potential in some earlier games, but there's no denying a drop off at the time foes got tougher, which goes back to my point that he is playing tougher defenses right now, so it's only natural to assume that he would get worse, but it's just the degree of worse that he is and how he's just lost consistency. He's not even having the big plays like he used to have usually. He's not even making those big time throws and things like that. So this is really interesting. If you're looking at it, I mean, he has a lower sack percentage. Like, he's been better at avoiding sacks, but his interception percentage has gone up. His touchdown percentage has gone down. His average yards per attempt has gone down. His yards per attempt have gone down. Hey, at least his rushing yards have gone up. He's starting to scramble more, but his passing yards have gone down per game. His completion percentage has gone down almost a little over 5 points. 5 percentage points. His passer rating has gone down 15 points almost, and even his EPA per dropback has gone down by 0.01. But the interesting thing there is that when you're looking at EPA per dropback, it wasn't very good either. Like through weeks 1 through 8, when we thought he was looking really good, according to EPA, which does its best, like this is like a formula to basically try to isolate a player from everything going on around him. We try to isolate Sam Howell from Eric Bieniemy's play calling, from receivers getting open or dropping passes, from the offensive line's pass protection, all of that type of stuff. It does the best job of completely isolating a player and seeing what's exactly wrong with them. And according to his EPA per drop back, even when it felt like he was balling out, he still wasn't exactly balling out. And that's what's interesting. It's gotten slightly worse, but only very slightly. It's basically like it wasn't good to begin in the first place. It wasn't even positive. So that's really interesting. And Mark Bullock did a great job. I mean, this is somebody that has taken the time to watch the All 22 already. Shouts out to Mark Bullock out there for the UK. Great follow on Twitter. Subscribe to his Substack and everything. It's completely worth the money. But this is a guy that has watched the All 22 of that Rams Commanders game. Again, I haven't had the chance yet. I'm really afraid of it. Like, I feel like I'm gonna be sick to my stomach watching it, but I do have to watch it at some point. Even if it's during the off season, I'm just gonna go back and try to watch all the All 22s for every game to truly get a grasp of everything that's going on. But either way, I'm digressing. He tweeted, somebody asked him, was Eric Bieniemy calling different plays when Brissett was in? And Mark Bullock's answer was literally, nah, same exact offense. The Rams stopped sending sim pressures, played more straight coverages, but McLaurin picked on the same cornerback. Brissett just basically did a nice job of noticing a safety playing shallow twice on deep shots. So basically, to answer your question, if you have any questions about, when Jacoby Brissett came into the game, was Eric Bieniemy calling a different offense? Was he calling different plays? Did everybody just play better? Not necessarily. It was more so Jacoby Brissett was just better equipped to take advantage of what the Rams were giving the Commanders offense with him under center and Sam Howell under center. Sam Howell just wasn't equipped and for some reason just didn't take advantage of those things. Now moving on. Speaking of Sam Howell, we got to dive into Ron Rivera because I feel like he's the biggest person to blame for all of this, because I feel like it's debatable whether or not Eric Bieniemy should stay next year, should be gone, should be fired, should be let go, or whatever. It's debatable about whether Sam Howell should be our franchise quarterback and at the very least get next year as an opportunity under better coaching, under a better front office, a really good potential draft class, potentially a great free agency with us having, if you cut Charles Leno and Logan Thomas, over $100 million in cap space. You know, there's a debate there whether we should or not give Sam Howell another try. Ron Rivera, I think it's like 99.99% definitive amongst our fan base. Again, I'm a statistics guy, so I'm gonna never say 100% on anything, but I feel, because there's always just gonna be that one person out there that always disagrees no matter what, or just that one piece of data that's always an outlier or whatever. But I feel like we all almost unanimously feel like Ron Rivera needs to go. So we can talk about Sam Howell, we can talk about Eric Bieniemy, we can talk about so many things, but we all, for the most part, agree that it's time for Rivera to go. So he had his press conference a few days ago, and we got to talk about a lot of the interesting things that he said, and then some of the interesting things that Eric Bieniemy said in his press conference recently. I think it was either earlier today or yesterday. Nikki Javala asked Ron Rivera if they would continue forward with Howell if the Commanders were competing for a playoff spot. He said, quote, well, if this was about playoffs and we're right in the middle of it and stuff like that, that's something you most certainly have to consider. Do we still have that opportunity to continue to win? That's one of the things you always consider, because again, you want to make sure everybody's getting the opportunity to be successful, unquote. And this is coming from the same guy that was the last one to find out of everybody, including our fan base, that we could be eliminated from the playoffs with a loss, I believe, against the Cleveland Browns last year. And everybody's pointing out great things. Like, first of all, Sam Fortier points out from that quote that Ron Rivera didn't just flat out say, yes, Sam's our guy at all. He didn't defend him at all. He knows he's on the way out. There's even a report that he's at peace with the fact that he's about to be fired at the end of the season. He knows it. Everybody knows it. He still doesn't take the opportunity to defend Sam Howell. He's the worst press conference coach I've ever seen in my experience of being a burgundy and gold. I wasn't alive back then when we were in the Super Bowl, so I haven't been a fan I haven't been alive to watch enough football as much as a lot of y'all. So maybe y'all know somebody, maybe I missed somebody even while I was alive. But I feel like nobody's been worse than Ron Rivera as far as speaking too much, saying the wrong thing. I mean, it's just like, come on, like what was the downside of you just saying flat out, no, Sam Howell's our guy. We're not even gonna sit here and pretend like there's a chance that we would have benched them for any other reason. Basically, he's saying like, yeah, if we still had a chance to make the playoffs, yeah, we would have benched Sam Howell. Just depending on what's going on. Like, there's no disadvantage to just saying you have Sam Howell's back. Your job is already gone. What do you have to lose to just give this quarterback at least one more vocal leader that's backing him up? Even though it's not the vocal leader we all like. I mean, it's just like, come on now, man. I just don't get it. And my boy DC Sports Dre also pointed out that even when Ron attempts to dodge a question, he says too much. Now we really know he benched Sam Howell if the playoffs were on the line, and they didn't take him out yesterday for protection. Which brings up the point, because at the end of the game, in his press conference immediately after the Rams game that night, around like 9 p.m., that man literally said we benched him for protection. But then he comes out here and completely contradicts himself with saying that, no, we would have maybe have benched them if we were in the playoff situation. I think it was smart on Nicky Javala's part to ask him a wraparound question to kind of trip him like that. And it's like, aha, we knew you didn't bench him for protection. We knew that night, but now the way that you're speaking on Sam Howell, we could tell you just basically lied to us after the Rams game. I just don't understand it. He's a walking contradiction. We're going to talk about that more soon. But my boy Rigo's Rag brings up a great point that he just could never evaluate quarterbacks properly. Luckily, Cam Newton just fell into his lap, and even then, Cam Newton had to literally carry the team on his back. I mean, even after Cam Newton fell to his lap, I just don't feel like Ron Rivera did a great job of building around him. I mean, some good offensive alignment, but never like a great, dominant, top-tier offensive line. Never had elite weapons. I mean, Greg Olsen was solid, but Ted Ginn Jr. being your number one receiver going to the Super Bowl, 15-1 record is absolutely ridiculous, man. Shouts out to the Broncos for taking advantage of that. I'm still sick my dog Cam Newton doesn't have a ring, but hey, man, it is what it is, man. Moving on, let's talk about Eric Bieniemy some before we even get to Rivera. Go back to Rivera because we still have some more Rivera to get to. But Eric Bieniemy, in his press conference, so it was earlier today, Eric Bieniemy just told reporters in Ashburn that it was Ron Rivera who suggested and pushed for Sam Howell to be sat down on Sunday against the Rams, and that basically Eric Bieniemy agreed, but it was technically Ron Rivera's idea. And basically Bieniemy cited that the head man has 51% of the control, and that Eric Bieniemy has somewhat of the other 49%. So that was literally Ron Rivera's call to bench Sam Howell. Now, when it comes to Eric Bieniemy, shouts out to Patan Analytics. They brought up a chart of basically ranking offensive play callers after week 15. And it says personnel and market efficiency with team constraints are included. So they're doing their best to isolate the play caller from the bad circumstances they have around them. Like, do you have a bad quarterback? Do you have a bad offensive line? Do you have bad receivers? Whatever. They're just trying to isolate and see who are the best and worst play callers in the NFL. Well, according to their chart, as you can see on the screen, Eric Bieniemy is 7th, above guys like my Georgia Bulldog, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Zach Taylor, even Shane Waldron, Matt LaFleur, Kellen Moore, above Ben Johnson. Like, Ben Johnson's like in the middle as an average guy. This is an interesting stat. Shane Steichen, the miracle, he's over there working with the Colts right now, with them not having a QB1, running back 1, or wide receiver 1 a lot of the season, and they're still finding a way to win games. Eric Bieniemy is above all of those guys. Arthur Smith is dead last, which is hilarious to me as a Falcons hater. Just as much as I hate the Cowboys, that's how much I hate the Falcons. So I think it's absolutely beautiful and poetic to see Arthur Smith that far away, to be that much of an outlier the wrong way, like double worse than Bill O'Brien. Like, terrible, terrible stuff over there. But basically their point is, according to advanced stats, all of this is not Eric Bieniemy's fault. They're basically trying to say that Eric Bieniemy, if you give him a better quarterback, a better offensive line, and all of these different things, Eric Bieniemy could be an elite play caller and offensive coordinator. But I highly doubt we'll ever find out, because again, I'm not here to even debate with y'all today whether Eric Bieniemy is good or bad. At this point, it doesn't really matter. The next regime is more than likely not going to retain him. The only circumstance I see Eric Bieniemy staying is if we get a defensive-minded head coach, and with us being very analytics-based, very progressive, very innovative and things like that, doing cutting-edge stuff, being the first to do it, being ahead of the curve, I think we're more than likely going offensive-minded guys. So passing league and getting a guy that knows how to pass the ball, to run the offense. You got to score. Offense is more important than defense right now. Like I've been saying for years now, it's not the 1980s anymore. A good quarterback and a good receiver with a good throw and a good catch is always going to beat good coverage. That's just how the NFL is designed. Good offense leads the points lead the views lead the money. The NFL is just going to probably never go back to the way it was. We may have paradigm changes and maybe run the ball a little bit more instead of being fast, be strong, impose your will. Maybe that will work a little bit better. But at the very least, I'm almost sure before I die, defense is never going to be more important than offense in the NFL. They are just too money hungry. We're never going back. So I'm pretty sure we're going to end up hiring an offensive-minded head coach, and I just don't see Eric Bieniemy. I don't even think Eric Bieniemy wants to not even a lateral move, a demotion. He's an assistant head coach right now, along with being an offensive coordinator. Would he be willing to just be flat-out offensive coordinator that doesn't even call plays? He would literally get demoted if we bring in an offensive coordinator. I think it's a very extremely slim chance that Eric Bieniemy stays here, whether it's his fault or not. I mean, again, we could debate about that. I may do a separate video on Eric Bieniemy alone, and we could debate that. But right now, it's really no point of even talking about it. But Eric Bieniemy said that Sam Howell, the reason that he's been struggling, and this is also something that came from his press conference earlier today, the reason he's been struggling is that he's pressing, because he's a young quarterback that wants to be great. He's forcing things. He's getting a little jumpy, a little antsy, and things like that. He's basically saying that he's overthinking, and it would help for him to be just a little bit more decisive. And EB said that it didn't cross his mind to sit Sam Howell for a full week, basically. So he's talking about Sam Howell's lack of decisiveness, and he's basically kind of blaming Sam Howell for why the offense in general, but also the offense that he envisioned for the Commanders, is not working the way it should. But they asked if Sam Howell could use a week off, and Eric Bieniemy said, quote, "That's not something that's even crossed my mind. When that discussion comes up, it's not even a second thought. He's going to get back on that horse." So Ron Rivera wanted to bench him. Eric Bieniemy was like, all right, cool, go ahead. But also Eric Bieniemy sticking up for Sam Howell better than Ron Rivera is by far, and saying that Sam Howell better be the starter. He needs to be the starter going into this Jets game, because there's no point in starting Jacoby Brissett. Also, Eric Bieniemy, on getting a second year to work with Sam Howell, he said, quote, "It would do wonders. He's learning the system. He's being tested on what he's seeing every single play. A second year will be outstanding because it would help him to continue that growth process." So that's another thing too. If Eric Bieniemy stays, it's because they've decided that Sam Howell is the franchise quarterback, or at the very least has the potential to. They go tackle in the first round, Brock Bowers, Marvin Harrison Jr., whatever in the first round. We stick with Sam Howell for at least another year. That's another way that Eric Bieniemy can end up staying, because I think Eric Bieniemy has done a pretty good job of developing Sam Howell, and also Sam Howell has struggled. I feel like a lot of the reason to it is because this is his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. He had one in UNC, he had Scott Turner last year, and then Eric Bieniemy's this year. Can he at the very least get the same offense and offensive coordinator 2 years in a row type of situation? So, hey man, they're kind of married to each other. If Sam Howell makes it to next season, Eric Bieniemy more than likely makes it next season, and vice versa. But that's at the same time the reason why I feel like neither of those guys will be here next season. Well, Sam Howell will probably be here, but he probably won't be the starting quarterback, or at the very least he'll be like in a QB competition with whoever they draft. And then I doubt Eric Bieniemy's here. Unless Sam Howell is named the franchise quarterback going into this 2024 season, I think Eric Bieniemy's gone. I really think that's over with. I really, really do. I think that's just a done deal. Also, let's go back to Ron Rivera. Winning percentages of the last 5 NFL head coaches for the Burgundy and Gold. Joe Gibbs 2.0 with a poor .468 percentage. Jay Gruden with a .418 percentage. Ron Rivera with a .41 percentage. He's third. But his, of course, is definitely about to go down. And honestly, again, with me wanting a better draft pick, it probably is going to go down. But it's not going to make a huge difference because in fourth place is Mike Shanahan, pretty far away with a .375, and Jim Zorn also with a .375. Ron Rivera can lose these last 3 games. He wouldn't still fall below that. But it's just really interesting. Out of the last 5 head coaches, Ron Rivera is the middle of the pack as far as win percentages go, and this last season was really bad. It looks like we probably will it finished the season with only 4 wins. We'll see how that goes though. Also, let's move on to the defense. Pro Football Focus ratings wise, Benjamin St-Juste actually led the defense with an 81.3, and I'm pretty surprised because it felt like he was getting picked on, but he also made some good plays. There were highs and lows. Kendall Fuller had a 71.1. I'm surprised he was that low. Khalid Hudson looked really good to me, had a 69. Cody Barton had a 67. I didn't really notice him much, and Percy Butler gave up big plays, but he also had some good plays in coverage. Again, another hot and cold guy like a Benjamin St-Juste had a 65.1. And I'm pretty surprised that Khalid Hudson wasn't a little higher. I thought he played pretty well, and I thought KJ Henry did pretty well against the run, but they didn't have him that high. And I thought Quan Martin played pretty well as well. But let's get back to Ron Rivera making me mad. And this is probably one of the reasons I want him fired the most. We could talk about the press conferences. We could talk about the terrible clock management. We could talk about the ineptitude at building a really good roster, playing it safe as much as possible, not addressing the O-line and certain position groups like we should have more, linebacker, stuff like that. My biggest problem with him right now is the walking contradiction that he always is. And this one's one of the ones that's made me the most upset because we cut Danny Johnson, and cutting Danny Johnson does not make your secondary better. That does not improve your chances of winning games. So that's a clear message that we're cutting Danny Johnson. Hopefully you land on a Super Bowl contender or something like that. You grab onto a contender, good for you, win-win, because we're trying to clear space of these veterans so these younger guys can play more, develop, and also so we can evaluate them, so the next regime can come in and have enough tape on guys like Quan Martin and Emmanuel Forbes, KJ Henry, and these younger guys to be like, okay, we see something there. Maybe we don't need to address that position group in the first 3 rounds. Maybe we can wait because maybe there's something here to this guy, or at the very least them playing more again. Maybe they just figure something out, something snaps, something clicks, and they just develop and become good players before the end of this season. Either way, these younger guys need to be playing as much as possible, so when they cut Danny Johnson, it sucks that Danny Johnson got cut, but I'm like, okay, that means we're paving the way for some of these younger guys to play, specifically in the secondary. Well, no, that boy Emmanuel Forbes played 6 snaps against the Rams. Why? I don't understand. And then Rivera said in his press conference it was in favor of playing Quan Martin more. What does that mean? Why doesn't Quan Martin play over Benjamin St-Juste, Kendall? First of all, he's supposed to be a safety. How about play over, I guess Percy Butler if you're trying to win wise, but how about over like a Cameron Curl? You're trying to evaluate these young guys. Or how about you just play everybody and just rotate them in and out? You're rotating Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul on a per drive basis. Sadiq Charles starts one drive, Chris Paul starts one drive. That's not in an attempt to put out there the best offensive line that you possibly can to protect Sam Howell. So you're not prioritizing winning as far as the offensive line goes. You're not prioritizing winning as far as cutting Danny Johnson goes. But suddenly when it comes to Emmanuel Forbes, we need to play Quan Martin over him and make sure Kendall Fuller and Benjamin St-Juste play as much as possible. I love Kendall Fuller, but we're very likely to not bring him back. Why not play Emmanuel Forbes over Kendall Fuller and then play Quan Martin as much as you can in there as a rotation as well? I don't see what that didn't make any sense. You bench Emmanuel Forbes and let him only play 6 snaps in favor of Quan Martin. Quan Martin's not even an outside corner. I'm just so confused. He said, quote, there was a lot more about what Quan Martin was doing and what we really had as a matchup going into this game. What does that mean, Ron Rivera? Looking at this chart right here, this is a chart of all of like the corners that have played at least minimum 175 coverage snaps, and it's a chart basically showing a cornerback's ability to prevent separation in both man and zone coverage. Emmanuel Forbes has actually been playing better in man coverage than zone coverage, and we drafted him to fit our zone scheme. So that's just weird in itself. That's another contradiction, just in Emmanuel Forbes by himself. Really, really weird. But then at the same time, Kendall Fuller, if you notice, in that good section, he's up there with like my Georgia Bulldog, Tyson Campbell, Travarius Ward, Denzel Ward, Trent McDurphy, Dante Jackson. He's up there in the conversation with those guys. Look at Fabian Moreau, ex-Commanders Fabian Moreau, up there with like Joey Porter and Marlon Humphrey almost. Like, Lord have mercy, that's a weird situation. Look at Brian Branch, who we passed on. We said we were going to get him, and then we didn't, and we ended up getting Quan Martin. And I like Quan Martin. I like his potential. He's starting to grow, which is another reason why Quan Martin and these younger guys, not just Quan Martin, Emmanuel Forbes too, KJ Henry, Sam Howell, Chris Paul, even maybe Sadiq Charles at guard. All of these young guys need to be playing as much as possible. Antonio Gibson, Chris Rodriguez, throw them out there as much as possible, because they need to develop, man. They need to go out there and develop and play better. Look at what Brian Branch is already doing, man. Come on, dog. And then moving on, it's just crazy that we've been trying our hardest to find an elite edge rusher. That boy Montez Sweat led our team in sacks before we traded him with 6.5. And then within just a couple of games with the Bears, that man already has 6 sacks and is leading the team. That is crazy. We've always been looking for an edge rusher that could potentially get like 13 plus sacks a season. That man Montez Sweat already has 12.5 with 3 games left to go. It's just like, come on, bro. Like, how do we keep messing this up, bro? How do we keep doing this, man? Can't wait to bring in a smart front office and coaching staff that can evaluate players, develop players, and put them in the right positions to succeed in games. Because Montez Sweat is definitely a guy that, hey, man, he should be balling out for us right now. But at the same time, it's kind of I see it from both sides, because we weren't going to give Montez Sweat the money that he just got from the Bears. We weren't. And so the fact that we were able to get potentially a second round draft pick, a high second round draft pick for him, I'm not mad. Also, sticking with Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy, you're included in this as well. I mean, 2 minutes and 47 seconds of game management hell, down 14 points, huddling before every play, snapping the ball with less than 5 seconds on every single play, with the play clock, zero urgency, zero awareness. Ron Rivera just standing idly around. Again, we were at the 1 yard line with 4 minutes, 47 seconds left in that game. 1 yard line. And it took us all the way until under the 2 minute warning to finally score a touchdown. And you got to remember the fact that the 2 minute warning is technically another timeout on your side. That's just complete incompetence. I blame Eric Bieniemy and also Ron Rivera for a lot of that. Now, also in very interesting news, just to let you know, and this is going to make Josh Harris super upset. I'm pretty sure he's aware of this. Pretty sure he's not waiting for my video to come out to find this out. I'm pretty sure he already knows. But fewer people watched the Commanders than the Cowboys in DC this past weekend. And we were playing the Rams at 4 p.m. This wasn't like a 1 p.m. game where the views were split. I mean, there were other games going on, but wow, like LA, for as far as LA goes, 660,000 people watched the Dallas game versus Buffalo. Almost 400,000 people watched the Commanders versus Rams game. That's from viewers in LA. And then you need to capitalize on the LA market, because LA is one of those markets where people are kind of split up everywhere. We have a lot of fan bases. We have a lot of Commanders fans, Burgundy and Gold fans out there in California as well. So that is worthy of note. But the worst part, DC, you named the Washington Commanders. If 440,000 people watched that Dallas game, only 340,000 people watched the Commanders game. I know Josh Harris saw those stats and was like, oh no. Him and Magic Johnson were like, oh yeah, we're cleaning house. Everybody gotta go. That's inexcusable. That makes no sense. That is a complete blemish on their track record, on their resume right now. It's not their fault, but that's crazy. Other owners got to be looking at Josh Harris like, hey man, you better do something about this. You better get something going. Now moving on, let's do like a small preview of what's coming up for the Jets. I didn't expect this video to go this long. I'm so sorry. I didn't even have this many notes and tabs as I thought in comparison to what I normally do. That's really interesting. But either way, man, injury report wise, right now, Tyler Larson has not participated in practice all week yet. Charles Leno hasn't. Joshua Pryor, Brian Robinson, and Jonathan Williams. So we're looking pretty beat up. And then limited, John Ridgeway and James Smith-Williams. And then full participants, you have Cody Barton and Emmanuel Forbes. But Emmanuel Forbes was a full participant in practice last week, and that man still only played 6 snaps. So it's just like that doesn't even matter. I don't know what Ron Rivera's doing there. But on the Jets side, as far as do not participates, you have John Franklin Myers, the defensive lineman. You have quarterbacks, most importantly, Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson. You have running backs, Israel and defensive back Jordan Whitehead. They were both limited, and then everybody else was full. Mekhi Becton's back fully. Even guys like Solomon Thomas, Joe Tippmann, Quincy Williams, a lot of their impactful players are healthy. So the injury report is a little bit longer than ours, but we have the majority of the do not participate. So they have more guys, but most of their guys are full participants and ready to go. They are good to go. So with Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson looking like they're more than likely not going to play, I mean, honestly, though, like, come on. Why in any way possible would Aaron Rodgers even think about coming to play for the Jets that are not going to make the playoffs? If they were, like, playoff bound and it was like, we just need you back and we're good, then there's a chance, even though it's still shouldn't have been physically possible for him to come back this soon. But he's not playing. Zach Wilson, I believe, I think he's dealing with a concussion right now. He's in concussion protocol. He's more than likely not playing. So you have Trevor Siemian. And that scares me, dog, because I really want a higher draft pick. And Trevor Siemian is just bad enough to where we may find a way to win this game. And hoorah, if we win this game and everybody balled out, Sam Howell looked like a franchise quarterback, Emmanuel Forbes looks like Darrelle Revis, cool. Other than that, if we're not balling, don't go out there and win a 9-7 game. That is literally pointless. You can't convince me otherwise. I'm definitely rooting for a high draft pick. Trevor Siemian being the starting quarterback potentially definitely puts us in jeopardy of losing that top draft pick. I'm very afraid. And we opened as 3-point underdogs against the Jets all the way back December 17th after the Rams game. That's probably even less than that. We may even be favored at this point now with Trevor Siemian looking like he's slated to be the starting quarterback. Another really interesting thing, the Jets have the 32nd ranked offense. The Commanders have the 32nd ranked defense. Something has to give. What happens when a stoppable force meets a movable object? We're going to see, man. This is going to be, like I said, the butt bowl, the battle of the terrible, man. I'm really afraid of what this game's going to look like, man. If I weren't a Commander or Jets fan, I wouldn't even pull up. That game's about to be atrocious. Also, it's really interesting because the Jets have only scored 1 touchdown in the first quarter all year. Just to give y'all a better understanding of how bad their offense has been this season. It's absolutely terrible. They have too many weapons for that. But I wouldn't be surprised that if for some reason against us, this is the game where all of their weapons finally go off. Garrett Wilson talking about how depressed he's been with how down of a season this been. He's going to use this season as like basically poster board material, like, oh yeah, I'm never going to have a season like that again. That's how bad the season's been. Watch Garrett Wilson go out there and ball out. But to remind y'all, if Washington loses, we have a chance to move up to the number 2 overall pick if Arizona and the Patriots win. If the Cardinals beat the Bears, the Patriots beat the Broncos, we can move up to the 2nd overall pick. And with the 49ers and the Cowboys after that, it's quite likely we hold on to that 2nd overall pick. But at the same time, if we beat the Jets, we are at risk of falling all the way to number 9, depending on what a lot of other teams end up doing if they lose or win. So that's scary, and I really hope we don't do that. And speaking of Trevor Siemian, dog, again, the reason I'm really worried about us falling into the 9th overall pick is because Trevor Siemian is terrible. Like, Sam Howell has a 64.7 completion percentage this year in 14 games. In 2 games, Trevor Siemian has a 48.7 completion percentage. That's ridiculous that you have more incompletions than completions. That makes 0 sense. He also has 2 interceptions to 0 touchdowns. Oh, my Lord. We are truly in jeopardy at losing that 4th overall pick. Oh, my God, Trevor Siemian, man. If there was a game to ever go crazy, man, Lord have mercy. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Is it Ron Rivera's fault the most? Is it Sam Howell's fault? Is it Eric Bieniemy's fault? Do you believe that chart with the play calling isolating Bieniemy and saying that it's literally not his fault, it's everybody else's fault? Do you agree with the point that Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy are probably married to each other, and if one stays, the other one more than likely stays? as well. All of that type of stuff. Let me know how you feel about all of the stats I brought, about Ron Rivera being a walking contradiction, only playing Emmanuel Forbes 6 snaps, but you cut Danny Johnson. What's the message? Are we trying to win, or are we trying to see what these young guys have? What is it? I don't understand how you're not doing all of one. Pick one. Let me know how you feel about everything, and of course, please support the channel, even if you can't donate. And if you can donate to the Cash App, PayPal, Super Chats, I really appreciate it. Shouts out to everybody that's been donating to the Super Chats for videos as well. I've been making sure I go out of my way to make sure I thank y'all for those, man. But even if you can't donate to the channel, at the very least, leave a like on the way out and leave any comment, even if it's just one letter. Just say hi, anything, because it means the world to the channel. And again, I'm doing my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. I may try tonight to like literally spend some hours replying to some comments, but I'm also working on so many other videos. Like I said before the intro, I'm working on where ESPN ranks the Commanders and the top head coaching candidates, the pros and cons, how can we improve, and things like that. Also, I'm going to update y'all on the Pro Bowl voting ranks for a lot of our players that may potentially make the Pro Bowl. The quarterback market, ESPN put out a video on that. I still got to talk about this whole Capitals and Wizards going to Virginia. It's so much, so stay tuned. So much content. Without further ado, man, I appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.